Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. We welcome you to the panel today, Thursday. We're hoping that you're here to listen to our three patients who are on an MSA journey as they share part of their journey and part of their expertise and time. And we're going to introduce them shortly. Before I read this announcement, I just want to thank Casey for being able to put all this together, get the questions to us, and making sure you all can join us today. So before starting, this educational session is not intended for the purpose of providing medical advice. All information, content, and material is for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. The information supplied through webinars or on our webpage or by any representative or agent of the MSA Coalition, whether by telephone, email, letter, or other form of communication, is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or other professional advice. So we have that out of the way, and now I think we're ready to begin. We have a whole hour, and I think the best way is to introduce our experts, so to speak, and start with them. So you are, Julio, you are. So we'll start with the two that are on our board first, and then go to our guest, save the best for last. No, just joking. First is Alan Smally. Alan, if you'd like to share a bit about what you've been, how you got to the board and as a patient representative right now.
Well, I was diagnosed with MSA in around 2017 after first being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and had retired in 2014 and done a lot of fun things. My wife and I traveled all around the country in an Airstream trailer, 150,000 miles, but I hadn't really done anything constructive. So after virtually attending the MSA Coalition meeting 2 years in a row, saw there was a call for volunteers, thought maybe I should try and do something constructive, and joined the board.
Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate that. Gary, you would be next. You want to share a bit about your journey?
Well, I was officially diagnosed in April of 2022, so this is fairly, new to me. Some of my first symptoms were just extreme, fatigue, brain fog. And, since then, I've had some dexterity issues, walking gait, has changed, and several other things that we can get into later. When I first was diagnosed, I just didn't know anything about the disease and wanted to learn about it as much as possible. In particular, from the aspect of learning about different research that's out there available, because I know that, MSA is something that, is fairly unknown, and there aren't many people that have it. So just wanted to see what kind of research was out there available as well. So that's how I plugged into the MSA Coalition, and just was interested in being a part of that group, and they talked about being on the board, and so it sounded like a really great place for me to be. So
very good. Thanks a lot, Gary. And last is Julio Santana, a patient. Julio, you want to tell us a little bit about your journey?
Hi, Larry. I was initially diagnosed in May of 2021. I was diagnosed with MSA-C.
Right.
I was initially very scared of the diagnosis, and did a lot of soul searching, a lot of crying, and I did, like the gentleman before me spoke, did a lot of traveling. I bought an RV. Well, I was forced by a company. I worked for the rail system for many years, and I was forced to resign. And based on my diagnosis, my speech and my gait are the only two things that really have been effective. Thank God. I was accepted, approved in the clinic trial in Mayo Clinic from mesenchymal stem cells. And I go back next week.
So that gives you a bit of an introduction to these three individuals. And now we'd like to go ahead and start. I don't see any questions, so let's go through how we'll do this today. We were sent in advance a number of questions from people who may be attending, hopefully are, and we also will welcome questions in the chat box. So if something comes up that you'd like to ask, or if you hear one of these questions that we start with and you'd like to add on to it, or it triggers something, please go ahead and ask when you can. So let me go to the first question here. And some of the questions that were sent in, by the way, are questions that will be best left to a doctor or a medical professional. And so those questions I'm not going to ask, and we'll try to get those to the helping physicians that we have with us. But the ones that you've asked that are for the patients, we're going to go right through. So one of the questions that they have is, do any of you have tips for avoiding UTIs? I don't know if any of you have had any thus far. You didn't bring that up in your introduction, but if you have, what are some tips that you've had related to UTIs? Anything at all?
I haven't had any yet so far. I mean,
You haven't?
I've had some urinary issues, but not a UTI. So,
Okay, Alan?
Well, I had one UTI quite a while ago. And I use intermittent catheterization and a nighttime Foley catheter. And my urologist says the main way to avoid it is to keep the amount in your bladder not too high. So the tips would be you have to drink plenty of fluids, number one. And number two, that makes you have to urinate, just to empty your bladder or catheterize, whatever you do, before the volume gets much greater than about 300 to 400 cc's.
Okay, thank you. Julio, how about you? Have you had any experience yet?
I haven't had any UTIs, but I drink a lot of fluids. I went to a urologist, and I was advised to drink a lot of fluids.
Okay.
So I drink about 40 ounces of water daily.
Okay. So two people have heard similar advice from doctors. Sounds like drinking a lot of water, and that would be helpful advice almost any time, but most certainly it sounds like in helping avoid a UTI. I might also remember that UTIs are caused by bacteria, and so it may be that sanitation, being able to keep the area clean, is also a possibility to help you in that case. Any of the three of you tried acupuncture from a homeopathic approach? Did any of you try that earlier on, or while you've been
did.
this far? Okay, Julio, you want to share?
I didn't, and I don't think I got much help from it.
Okay.
So what I do want you to know, and the people and the families, that, like I said earlier, my speech is something that has been effective.
Okay.
But other than my speech and balance, I keep a lot of exercise, I drink a lot of fluids, and live a normal life.
So the acupuncture you tried, and
Didn't
it
help.
didn't do any good. It didn't for you.
In my opinion, it didn't.
Okay. Either of the other two of you try acupuncture?
No,
Other homeopathic approach?
no.
No? Okay.
I haven't.
So you, Gary?
no, I haven't.
Okay. Very good. Okay. I get one coming in.
Although the person doing the acupuncture swore that it was gonna help. So
Good.
be careful with who actually does the acupuncture,
Very good.
because he swore that it was gonna work.
Each state's different as well. So good answer there.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so much, Julio. Okay, we got a question from somebody already on the Q&A. They want to know, this is for all three of you, I would think. We'll start, Gary, with you. How have you talked about MSA with your family?
Well, I mean, I just told them what I knew about it, that it's a terminal disease, right? So I wanted them to kind of understand that. and, share with them what I thought about that. I also just talk to them kind of on a, maybe a weekly basis about things that are going on. They all ask how I'm doing, my children and my wife. Well, my wife, she's here, so she sees me all the time, so she knows how I'm doing. But, I just let them know what's going on. If there are any changes, they ask me, how I'm feeling. I usually feel pretty, just pretty bad, just exhausted and fatigued all the time. So I tried in the beginning not to talk about that so much, but I think I discovered that, it was just better for me to tell them exactly how I felt, because, if they don't understand that, then they're going to kind of miss, what I'm sort of going through. And I just felt like it was better for me to just kind of let them know. So, I mean, I don't really, emphasize anything, about how bad I feel sometimes, but I certainly don't hide it either. So I just talk to them on a regular basis and let them know what's going on, and, any changes that might be happening.
So you have pretty open communication with people.
Yeah, I'd say it was as open as I could imagine. It just has to be, because they're all adults now.
Okay.
All my kids are out of school, they all have jobs and everything. So, yeah.
Okay. Alan, how about you? How have you communicated with your family?
Pretty much the same as Gary said. I keep a very open channel of communication.
Okay.
We speak on the phone, we text, we Zoom sometimes, and keep them all informed how I'm doing.
Good. So you're open as well.
Yes, very.
Very. And Julio, how about with you and your family?
I tried being open, and when I got a lot of pushback. Was of them, matter of fact, I think they're not kind of demand.
I could understand, and
Where they feel like I'm portraying somebody that's a lot worse than they think, and nobody wants to read anything about the disease.
Okay.
A lot of denial.
A lot of denial.
So rather than complain, I do it for myself. I bought a stationary bike, as you can see.
Okay. Gotcha.
I bought a trike because I can't ride my two-wheeler no more. I love biking. So what they do is I bought a trike and I can ride it all day. I can ride my trike all day.
Excellent.
I
Excellent.
do a lot of walking. I do about 100 push-ups a day. I stay active and I eat well.
Okay.
So rather than complain, I do it for myself.
Okay. Sometimes what you both, all three of you have said is somewhat what I hear often on the call line, and that is there are those that are very open communication leads to a lot of good open communication from others, and there's others like Julio that may face some pushback, and maybe denial is an issue, but that can be the case as well. Let's see another one. In your case, how long did you have the symptoms before being diagnosed? And Julio, we'll start with you this time.
I think January 2020, I started to notice that there was a problem.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed in May of 2021, of which is both John Hopkins and Vanderbilt.
Very good. So you've had it just a little over 3 years, somewhere around 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was playing competitive football until the summer of 2020.
Okay. Gary, how about you?
Well, I was seeing a couple of docs, for different things before I was diagnosed. They said I had low testosterone and then low sugar, as well. Not low sugar, low iron. So they thought I was anemic, and then they thought I had low testosterone. That was causing the fatigue and everything. So I, started taking some medications for those things, and then in December of 2022, I went to the hospital because I felt so bad. I was just so exhausted, just so fatigued. I mean, there was just something wrong. I couldn't figure it out. I was taking some testosterone. I was also, I had my iron up as well for my blood, and it was just not helping me. So And so they diagnosed me, well, they didn't diagnose me in the hospital. They just said I need to go see a neurologist because the docs there and the nurses thought I had like something like, Parkinson's or, maybe multiple sclerosis or something like that. So it was funny that they saw that, but the other two docs that I was seeing didn't even think about that, as an issue, which was kind of odd to me. But anyway, I went to see a neurologist like the next week. I was able to get in. It was just such a blessing because they had an appointment in August, and that was the only one they had for this particular neurologist. And then they said, well, we have one next week. I was like, I'll take it. All right. So anyway, I got in there and was able to see them, and he did a bunch of tests, did a bunch of diagnostic things. And then after about 2 or 3 months in April, he officially kind of diagnosed me in April. So
Okay, so it's been a little less than a year that you've been diagnosed.
yes, it has. Yeah.
Okay. And Alan, how about you?
Well, looking back on it, I had symptoms probably in 2014 or 15. My arm wasn't swinging when I walked. I was swimming competitively in master swimming. My stroke was weird. I just couldn't do it right. I was shuffling some. My wife had trouble understanding me sometimes. And I didn't think much of it. I denied it, of course. So about 2016, my doctor sent me to a neurologist who diagnosed Parkinson's and mentioned MSA was a possibility. And then about a year later, I went to a movement disorder specialist who diagnosed MSA. And that was in 2017 or maybe early 2018.
Okay. So there's their journey that you heard, and those are probably typical to what many of you who are watching this and listening and participating have gone through as well. I'm going to go to another one in the question and answer. Have all three of you had a chance to work with an interdisciplinary team as you have been going through the diagnosis and the care? And Gary, I'll start with you this time. Is it an interdisciplinary team that you have helping you through this journey?
Well, when I started my new, with my new neurologist and everything, I switched everything over to the place where I'm going now.
Okay.
So it's Emory down in Atlanta, and I guess I've kind of done that sort of myself, just because I wanted to have everything in one place, so they'd be able to share everything and have everything. I'd say as far as any kind of coordination, there really isn't necessarily a coordinated effort, on their part to kind of say, okay, here's what you need to do with this person, that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
so I'd say, no, except for me, and I'm trying to do that myself because I know it just makes life a lot easier for everybody. If I'm dealing with all the docs in one place, So.
Okay. So you've taken that role on yourself to make sure
Yeah,
everything.
I guess so. Yeah, that's
Okay.
true. Yeah.
Okay, Julio, how about you? Interdisciplinary team working with you?
Yeah, my story is similar to Gary's.
Okay.
So although I know where to go, if I need and it's just been how is it? Say it again. I'm jealous because that's the one part of me that's been affecting my speech.
Mhm.
And when I hear Gary talking, I'm jealous because it's
Yeah.
something that I never thought would happen to me.
Yeah.
Was the fact that this disease would affect my speech.
And each person's different. You've heard it before, a snowflake disease, and that's what you see right here on the screens in front of you. Alan, how about you?
My story is about the same. Also, I don't have a formal interdisciplinary team, but I put my own together by seeing different specialists within the same system.
Okay. Very good. So you can tell some patients seem to be their best advocates, and probably the caregiver is right behind them in many cases when they're doing that.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I have another one before I go to one of the questions that were sent in. If any of you are in a wheelchair, or if you're in a position where you're not doing as much walking as you might have or would like to do, what kinds of exercise do you do? And if so, does it help you with your walking? Does it make, if you can walk, does it make it easier or better for you? Julio, you've talked about your balance issue. What kind of exercises do you do? Is the bike the one you do or others?
The bike, the walking. I also do a lot of so for example, if I try standing on my toes
Okay.
or exercising,
Oh.
I noticed that was a problem. But if I'm holding it, something
Okay.
I can exercise much better.
Okay.
So just stay active. I walk. I try not to hold on to nothing.
Very good. So you're not a wall walker?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Good.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, Alan, how about you? How do you deal with the exercise? Are you still walking? Are you needing exercises because you are less able to walk now?
Well, I'm less able to walk now. Early in my disease, I was doing running and did triathlons and master swimming. So I was exercising very heavily, which I have all my life. And that kept me going till now when I'm having trouble walking. I have a treadmill and an exercise bike that I ride. And we walk outside when we can in Connecticut. It's winter now, but I also lift weights and do exercises. I've hired a personal trainer who had me doing exercises, and I do some yoga, and basically just try and be up as much as I can.
Okay. Now, one from the questions that were sent in earlier. How do you or does your caregiver help you with lightheadedness and tiredness? This disease is known to cause fatigue. And maybe that's already hit you at times. It sounds like from what a couple of you said, it is an issue. How has your partner, your caregiver helped you feel more comfortable about that fatigue or take care of it when it hits? Alan?
Well, a common cause of being weak and lightheaded is your blood pressure being low. So we have blood pressure cuffs that we can take my blood pressure very frequently. We take it probably 10 times a day. And before I get up in the morning, we take my blood pressure. If it's low, I don't get up. I might go down. So I drink some extra fluid, move my legs a lot first, and do things like that. So my wife is a retired pediatrician, but she takes care of big people too, like me.
Good. And so do you take naps? Have you gotten used to taking naps and feeling comfortable, falling asleep at times? And
I have significant supine hypertension, which means when I lay flat, my blood pressure goes way up.
ooh,
So I can't lay down.
no.
And it's hard to take. For years, throughout most of my life, I took a lot of naps. But now I can't lay down, so I stopped taking naps.
Wow. Wow. So that would seem to me difficult from what I've seen with MSA patients. Julio, how about you? How do you deal with your tiredness? Does exercise help you out of that?
Yeah. I just don't let it catch up to me.
Okay.
The day when I can take a nap when I'm watching TV, but I don't. I'm afraid that I get used to it.
Okay. Gary, you got anything to add?
I do this thing. It's called the 7-minute workout, which doesn't sound like much, but it's actually supposed to be a pretty good. It's a Johnson & Johnson app that I just signed up for recently, and it's actually like a thing that I'd like to do it more than once a day, but I just feel so bad most of the time. I just do it like maybe once a day if I'm good, and I also will walk with my wife in the afternoons occasionally. And that's about the only exercise that I'm doing right now. I mean, I really know that it's something that I need to do. I just can't get motivated to do it. It's just really hard for me to get up sometimes and just to do stuff. So I think that's more something I really need to work on that. So I'm trying to, trying to look at that and figure out how to do that differently. So.
Well, you've heard from a couple of others, so maybe that'll help get you into the right direction that you need going forward. Let's hope.
Yeah, the fatigue catch up to me. I
Yep,
don't let the fatigue catch up.
there you go. Try
So-
your best. Yep,
And everybody's different.
everybody is. That's right. So true, Julio. Okay, we have another one. I don't think any of you do have this, but maybe you've dealt with it a little bit in one way. It was sent in. Do any of you have dependents at home? And the person wrote in and said she has 2 teens and sometimes finds it overwhelming when there's also care for the patient as well. Have either of you had to face that for a period of time, extended period of time? Is that something that's been a part of your life for this? Julio?
Don't think my boys are married and gone.
Okay.
I get my grandkids every once in a while. And it's hard to get them to understand, but they try.
Okay. And Gary, you said yours are all grown up in a way. Is that so? They've not been at home while you've had the symptoms coming on. Is that correct?
That's correct. We had 2 that lived close by, but one of them just moved away. He went out to California, and so so we have one that's close. But I don't see them enough. She's one of my girls. I got 3 girls and 2 boys, and she's got a beautiful little grandbaby of ours. It's amazing and awesome. So yeah, that's not an issue for us. Yeah.
Good. And Alan, I'm sure that you probably didn't have any dependents around during that time, maybe grandchildren or that. Did you have any issues with dependents around the house?
No dependence.
Okay. So I like this one, and I just think it's one that you could extend on if you wanted to a little bit. What is your best form of support to date? What's your best form of support? Is it the caregiver that sits beside you and helps you? Is it knowing the doctors are there? Is it finding resources that you're able to read that can help you better? Is it, as Julio has done, getting into a clinical trial? What has been your best form of support to date? Gary, start with you.
Well, I mean, I would just sort of say, I mean, this is kind of a worldview thing, but I'm a believer in Jesus, and that has been just the most incredible thing for me, is to have that relationship develop over time. So as far as, medical support and things like that, I think I have a good team of folks. I have a good neurologist, and they know what they're doing. They're researchers like 90% of the time, they're clinical 10%. So they really understand the disease. That's very helpful as well. My wife has, been really good about trying to help me do stuff. I think as she sees me, kind of continue to sort of, I guess, deteriorate, whatever you want to call it, that's been something that she's beginning to understand. It's, it's just like a real thing. And I just struggle with so many little things now, like just buttoning my shirt sometimes, or pulling my shirt on, or taking it off, just stupid little things like that I have trouble with. And she, she's getting better about trying to help me with stuff like that. So that's been really good. My children are also really incredible. And I got a group of guys too. I got 3 guys that are really part of my inner circle. And they are regularly checking in on me and just seeing what's going on. So we communicate several times a week, so that's good too.
Yeah, it's good to have friends that are there to help you as well. Yeah. Julio, how about you?
Same thing. I do a lot of reading.
Okay.
My wife helped me a lot. The kids help me. My doctor are trying to cure my disease. I joined the research study. I got them in Minnesota once every 3 months. I fly.
Okay.
Basically, that's it. A lot of research, a lot of reading.
Yes. There's a lot out there that you can learn. If you get to the right resources, that's very true. Somebody asked, how do you cope emotionally with MSA? We know what kind of disease it is. We know there's a finality to this. How do you 3 cope with the disease? Alan, I didn't get you in on the last one. I'll start with you this time.
Well, I just look at it as a hurdle that I have to leap over periodically. And I've been given this disease and I'll make the best of it. My wife takes such good care of me. I really enjoy life. I certainly have problems, lots of them, but I just don't let them get me down. And I'm very fortunate. I've never been a person whose emotions have been very prominent. So it's very easy for me to just trust in my wife and go on and enjoy life.
Okay, good. Gary, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of think of this as sort of, this is where I'm at right now in my life. You know, I can't do really much about it except try to understand it better, do the best I can to try to, I'm trying to figure out what kind of research projects out there are worth me being involved with, and will have the most effect, and that sort of thing based on the risk, and return opportunities. So I'm just sort of just trying to, I don't want to be a complainer, for my family, my kids, my wife, I really I want this to be done as well as I can, so that when I'm done with it, and I'm gone, they'll say, he was a brave guy and he dealt with this the best way he could have. So it's kind of what I think right now about this, so, but my symptoms are still kind of pouring in, and I don't have anything really, really major yet, but I do have some issues already, so we'll see how that goes over time.
Okay, good. Julio?
And literally, I did a lot of crying. But
Yeah.
since then, I take it one day at a time and realize the others have it worse than me.
Okay,
I've got a lot of support from my friends,
good.
and like Gary saying, I don't leave a legacy of a whiner. I want to be the kind of person that everybody can say he took it on the chin and for the football, good fight.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. Okay, so I have another one. How do you teach others, or how would you teach others to advocate, to get their docs on the same page? I know, Gary, this might be, you and Julio both did the same thing. You put together your team that is helping you. How did you go about it, I guess, is what they're wanting to know. Could you explain and maybe a bit of detail how you decided? Did you use a website? Did you just sit down and ask?
Well,
What were the ways you did it? Julio, I'll start with you.
I was fortunate enough to meet Dr. Singer at a Mayo a long time ago, and I've stuck with him. After him sort of lead me to different studies or different research, I've actually that way and putting somebody else's in their hands.
Okay.
Somebody that knows more than me.
Okay.
And I do a lot of reading.
Very good. Okay, Gary.
Yeah, I try to be like Julio in that way. I try to get out there and learn as much about this as I possibly can. As far as, trying to put the team together, I just thought it would be a lot easier for me to be, at one institution. So I'm at Emory now, and I have every doctor that I go see is there now. So I have an endocrinologist, I have a urologist, I got a neurologist, and probably one or two others that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but they're all kind of together. They're on the same portal system, and so they can all see everything that's done. So, my blood test, my blood work, everything is available to all of them. So that's kind of what I thought would just make things better for me, and, just kind of get through this as well as possible as far as dealing with, my medical part of it, So.
Right. So did you get advice from your neurologist as to who to call? And say, for example, a place has 2 or 3 urologist? How did you find the one that you would like to work with?
Well, yeah, I asked my neurologist for referrals first, and he gave me a couple that I did follow up with, and I got those, so that was really the one thing. And then, for others, if I wasn't sure about, who to contact, I just look online and I find somebody, I wanted to find somebody who'd done work in the neurological area, primarily. So, and, so I'd look for somebody like that, somebody who, fit I like somebody who's a little bit older, right? Who's done this stuff for a while. So I wanted to have, that as a part of it as well. So I just kind of looked at, some issues that I thought were important, and just tried to pick, a couple of people based on those criteria that I kind of come up with.
Okay. Now, Alan, you hadn't told anybody, but you do have a bit of a background of expertise in this, and that you were a doctor. So you could probably share a little bit of this from not only what you went through then, but as a patient. How would you help people or tell people to try to put together a team that's going to get them through this?
Well, I was fortunate, and I knew all of the doctors. I was able to pick good ones that I had dealt with in my emergency medicine career. For the general population who doesn't have that luck, I would say you need word of mouth. If you need a urologist, ask around your older male friends. They'll all have had a urologist, and they can tell you the one who's the most important thing you're looking for is not the medical expertise. That's harder to judge, but a good patient bedside manner and everything. And then you just have to hope that medical knowledge is right. But the average person just has no way of judging that. So you just want to find someone who's personable and likes to talk to people.
Takes time.
It takes time, and that you have to ask patience.
Very good. And I think another part is compassion and empathy. From everything I hear from people, doctor with compassion is so important to them.
Very important.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So here's one that I think might be one you could each answer, because I'm sure these come on to you once in a while. How do you know when a symptom begins? What is it that tells you, oh man, this is a new symptom, I'm not sure what I'm going to do? Is there something inside you that does it, or what?
You can feel it. You can feel it.
Okay.
For example, recently I started feeling tremors, internal tremors, like my body shakes. The whole, not outwardly, but inwardly. So basically, experiencing tremors.
Okay.
Something out of the ordinary.
All right. Gary?
I never had any kind of issues ever in my life, really. I mean, I always was very healthy. I was very active. You talk about new symptoms. When I first had the fatigue and I had like brain fog, which was just like I don't know, just like I just didn't feel right. That went on for several months, and that was when I was seeing the other docs. And so then when I was diagnosed, and I kind of knew this was, this seems like, it probably is correct because, my symptoms and everything. Now, when something happens, like some of my symptoms now, I always kind of look to MSA first because, one of the things my doc said, well, you're getting older, well, yeah, I am getting older, but, I haven't aged like 10 years in a year, which is like how I feel sometimes, And so, I always kind of look to MSA. I look to see if it is a symptom. It almost always is, or there's somebody in, one of the MSA groups that I have, a Facebook connection with or whatever, who talks about it as well. So, I just try to research it, look at the different symptoms, and unfortunately they vary so widely between people too. I mean, this is just such a crazy thing that it's so different, based on people's physiology,
Right.
And, you know, it's just really hard to kind of figure this stuff out. So I just try to look at it, you know, see what it feels like, you know, if it's really a symptom or if it's, I don't know, maybe something else, you know, maybe just I had a problem or something with, you know, some other issue. But I think almost all my stuff is related to MSA right now. So, because they are symptoms of MSA.
Okay, Alan, anything to add?
Well, I guess I would add the main thing for people is to be aware that if some symptom is new, to think, not assume it's MSA. For instance, if you're having chest pain, that's probably not MSA, and to consult with your doctor if there's any question in the character of the symptom. I have things all the time, like everybody, and it's first impulse is to brush it off and ignore it. And then if it persists, think about it.
Okay. Two of the things Alan has said, yes, it could be something else besides MSA, although what Gary said, if it feels like it is and you can consider it, that's good. The other thing to help you right now is on the website, msacoalition.org, under MSA resources, you will find a booklet, a PDF file called MSA What We Need to Know, and that can certainly help you as well if you're having questions about symptoms or how to tell if one is just starting. Pain is an issue for two different people, one that sent it in and one that just did it in our chat box. They would like to know how or what pain you have had and how you've had to address it or do address it. So any of the three of you have pain associated with this disease? And if so, what have you been able to do to alleviate that pain?
I have back and neck pain, and I have gone to physical therapy and do exercises for them.
Do they help?
Well, yes, I think so. It's always hard to say if what you're doing is helping or just changing.
Okay.
For instance, I've done yoga, which has helped my back, I think, quite a bit.
So in your case, it's been physical activity rather than medication that's been helping you with your pain.
Yes, I've not taken any medication for pain.
Okay. Gary, how about you? Do you have pain? And if so, what have you been able to find to help you?
Well, I have arthritis in my back, so I have had that for several years. Okay, and so I take I take a pill for that regularly. But then I've had this thing with my hands. I mean, my left hand, my left side of my body was the first thing I noticed. You know, I had issues with MSA or related to that. You know, just being uncoordinated, unable to do things with the left side of my body primarily. Or, just little things, like trying to unscrew the lid off of a jar or something like that, right?
Right.
So I just noticed in the last 2 weeks, my two internal fingers, not the external ones, but the two internal, they're so incredibly sore and painful. I can hardly move them sometimes, and I can't use them to do anything. And I'm just wondering, is that possible that it's like the arthritis? Or is it, MSA related? It would just seem very weird if it was MSA, but I just can't tell. And it's so painful. I can't hardly, I can't use it for hardly anything. It just hurts so bad. So I have taken Tylenol for it, and that seems to help it a little bit. But as far as any of the other drugs that I'm on now, it doesn't seem to change anything.
Okay. Julio, pain? And so
Well,
you deal with it.
fortunately, like I said earlier, the only two, if it was my speech, my balance, you would think I'm normal.
Is that right? So no pain in your case.
No pain at all.
Okay.
None. My hands. I mean, whenever I see my movement, especially the things that they concentrate on, my hands, my wrist, no rigid, no muscle rigidity.
Huh. Okay. Well, good. It's good that somebody doesn't have pain. It's great.
Thank God, at least we're not.
Right. Yeah. Now, you are one that has come up in a question. Who else has been in a clinical trial or has tried to get in a clinical trial of you three? And Julio, you want to share a bit about how you got into your clinical trial, just briefly?
Well, fortunately, I was not diagnosed first by John Hopkins, neurology.
Okay,
All right. Then Vanderbilt. So I went to Massachusetts and I saw a gentleman named Dr. Rick Carano.
okay,
And he accepted me in the study.
okay,
Before we got started, the letter came out where that wasn't um as functional or it wasn't as good as you might think.
okay,
Then I went to Vanderbilt and I was approved by Dr. Daniel Collison to the biohaven study.
okay,
And before I could get started with them, I was approved by Dr. Lowe and Dr. Singer.
okay,
And I had a choice. Do I do the biohaven or do I do the mesenchymal stem cells? And it chose the stem cells. And now I think they're going to ATH 434.
okay.
So I've been fortunate
So
to
how,
get in a few.
so how long have you been in the study, the mesenchymal stem cell study?
For about a year now.
A year? So you're close to the end.
And yeah, I am at the end. Matter of fact, I go to Brazil next week. But I have noticed, I'm not sure if the study was caused this, other than my speech and my gait, nothing else has progressed.
Okay, good. So
Something, I'm hoping that that study did help.
it would be good if it did. You'd be helping others as well besides yourself. You're helping others, everything you do there. So it's great. Gary, how about you and Alan? Have you tried to get into a clinical trial yet?
I've been involved with 3 at Emory, which are, one was with this like a little device, you know, that measured all kinds of things, blood pressure in particular. That was a
Okay.
portable thing. I did that with my first neurologist. And then I've done 2 with the second neurologist. You know, the first neurologist ended up going over to, he went on a sabbatical or whatever, or 1-year leave at Harvard. And so I'm working with his boss now, who also diagnosed me with MSA-P. But you know, he has this interest in MRI and, you know, looking at how you can, you know, do early detection and stuff like that. So I've been involved with 2 of those studies.
Okay.
I was interested in the one that Julio is involved with, and I went up to Mayo and was unable to get into that study because I didn't pass the sweat test or whatever, you know. And then there was a hypertension thing too, which, you know, was not good enough for their you know, for their qualifications. So
That's another thing. I never experienced OH that got, and I still sweat profusely.
you
Do
did.
you? You sweat too?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
So what was the other one with the blood pressure? What was that one like? When you laid on the table and then, you know, they
Right, the tilt test with me, and my blood pressure never fluctuated.
wow, that's interesting.
Huh. So Alan, how about you? Have you tried to get into a clinical trial?
I've been in a number of studies. I've been in 2 or 3 of just like with the MRIs and things and answer questions. But I was in the MSTAR for 2 years, the study of verdiperstat from Biohaven. And unfortunately, that's kind of a bad tale of studies. I'm convinced, and I'm sure that the medicine helped me, but it didn't help people in the large conglomerate group.
Right.
So they stopped medicine and I had to get off it, which was very, very disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a possibility with the way the clinical trials work. And you've heard from two different ways. With Julio, he's gotten into one where they're trying to treat the disease. Both Gary and Alan have been in clinical trials where they're learning more about their own symptoms, and other people are learning about those symptoms and how their body deals with it. So there's multiple ways to get into a clinical trial. And you can find those at clinicaltrials.gov. That would help you immensely in finding clinical trials for an MSA patient. Numbness sensation when you walk. Now, Julio, well, I'm not going to ask you because you seem, although with balance issues, do you notice a problem with numbness in your feet? Is that an issue for you?
No.
No.
Just balance.
Go ahead.
Just the balance issues. But yeah, no numbness. And I mean, it's not a feeling in my body at all, other than the fact that somehow my balance has been affected.
Okay. Alan, either you or Gary have any numbness sensations in your feet?
I have some numbness in my feet, but I think it's related to my back disease. I've had back surgery.
Okay.
And disc disease, and I think it's related to that.
Okay. So again, the thing comes up, is it part of the disease or is it something from something else? So that is an issue that you need to check with your medical professional to find out any more about. Let's see, let me go down and see if there's any more that we have. I think I heard one of you, yes, Gary, I believe you had orthostatic hypotension as an issue. Is that correct? Somebody wants to know, how are you dealing with that? What is something that you're using, or how are you dealing with orthostatic hypertension?
I don't know if that's really a bad thing for me. The only thing I notice is occasionally, when I stand up, I get dizzy.
Yeah.
If I stand up too quickly, so that happens occasionally. I'm not taking, well, I do, actually, I had high blood pressure before I, was diagnosed with this, and my blood pressure has kind of changed a lot. It's like a lot lower now than it was for some reason. But as far as taking any medication for that, I don't really do that. I mean, I'm taking like carbidopa, levodopa several times a day, the regular, instant release and also the extended release at night.
Right.
And then I'm also taking something called sertraline, which is like a Zoloft. I think it's an antidepressant, but they say that there's some benefit. I didn't take it for that originally. They prescribed it to me because they said it would help me feel a little bit better. So, I'm taking that regularly as well. And then I'm also taking another thing called atomoxetine, which is like a mild stimulant that they use for people. I think they use it primarily for people that have, like dyslexia or, whatever the learning disability. It's not dyslexia, but it's one where you have ADD, that's it. And so it's a mild stimulant, and that's supposed to help me feel a little bit better too. So I know that when I don't take the atomoxetine, I just feel a little more tired, but it doesn't really make that big of a difference,
Okay.
So yeah, so that's that. Yeah.
Alan, orthostatic hypertension?
Yeah, I have severe orthostatic hypertension. I've fallen before I started my medications. I put a hole in the bathroom wall with my head once. I fell another time and broke my collarbone.
Ooh.
So I would get quite low. And now I'm taking 3 different medicines: Midodrine, Strattera, which is atomoxetine, which Gary was talking about, and pyridostigmine.
Okay.
So I take all of them, and knock on wood, my blood pressure's been under pretty good control.
Very good. Excellent. So you found out how to do it. So maybe medication, maybe changes in other things, but most certainly it sounds like you want to talk to your doctor before you do make any decisions. There are other plans as well that can be found on that book, the MSA Guide, what you need to know. I know this was a tough one for my wife when we first found out about the disease. Someone wrote in and said, how do you emotionally transition from the pre-MSA world to where you are now? So before MSA, it sounds like for each of you was varying lengths of time. And then all of a sudden you find out one day that you have this disease that is is not one that you really want to have. So I guess they'd like to know, how did you deal with that when you went through that process? Alan?
Well, I just accepted it as a fact and made my mind up I was going to enjoy life and do fun things as long as I could. We traveled around the country, as I said, in an RV for the first 5 or so years of my MSA, and had a good time. Went all over, saw all the national parks almost, and it was just really fun. So
Okay.
that's what I did.
All right. Julio?
Well, initially, like I said, there's a lot of association, a lot of crime. Then figured let me use all the vacation I have. I made a bucket list.
Okay.
And now recently I bought an RV and I'm doing like Alan, doing some moving around.
Good.
And since I was forced to retire, I took advantage of it. But initially it was rough. I had a rough time.
Very good, Julio. Now, one thing I will say now from the MSA Coalition perspective, Julio and I first met each other by him calling the call line. And Julio has called several times and we've always had good conversations. So that's another place where you could get support if you need, is to call the MSA helpline. We're getting close to the end. So let me see if I find any more that would be something to help kind of bring this together. I guess maybe the best one I have is from from the other line, from the ones that were sent in. And the question is, 2 years progressively getting worse. My question is, do you all have relative good days, relatively bad days, and horrendous days in random? So let's maybe end with that one. When you're going through a typical week or month, how do you see your days fill in from the bad, the good, to, as she said, horrendous? Alan, I'll start with you. You see a pattern?
Well, my movement disorder neurologist said every day is different. And that is definitely the case. You can have a good day one day and a bad day the next. And I can have several bad days in a row, but usually it's just one. And just wait for the next day.
Gary?
The thing that I noticed mostly that seems to affect my how I feel is my sleep. I can't sleep hardly at all. I mean, I got this little watch, thing like an Android watch, that I can wear at night, and it monitors my sleep patterns and stuff like that, because I was just kind of curious how that was looking. And I see that I'm not getting hardly any REM sleep at night for some reason. And also, I sleep very lightly too for most of the night, or I'm awake. I wake up like 2 or 3 times a night, and it's really hard for me to get back to sleep. So, I do know if that happens, where it's really bad, the next day I feel really, really crappy and even more exhausted than usual. So, but I don't know. Sleep patterns are just so weird for me now. I don't even like to think about it sometimes, because I can't sleep during the day either. I just can't sleep for some reason. Okay. And so that has probably more to do with the way I feel during the day than anything else lately. So.
Okay. Well, Julio, I know how you've only got the 2 things wrong with you, so this probably wouldn't be something you'd need to address, but another minute. Oh, go ahead, Julio. What'd you say?
It doesn't.
It does. I didn't think so.
Pretty consistent.
Okay. I have one more that I think would be good to answer. I think we can squeeze it in. Physical therapy. I think I heard each of you talking about getting therapy at some point. How has physical therapy been for you? Alan, what would you say? Physical therapy good?
Well, I think physical therapy and also occupational therapy are outstandingly good for the right things. And I think it's important, if you can, I have seen a neurophysical therapist who only sees neuro cases. Okay. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Gary, has physical therapy been a part of yours, and how do you see it helping?
I took this thing, it's called LSVT Big Parkinson Physical Therapy, and it stands for Lee Silverman Voice Treatment. But you know, the thing I did was not for voice, but it was more for physical, like moving around and stuff like that.
Right.
And I took that a few months ago. It was very helpful for me because it really helped me think about, you know, the changes that were happening, and, you know, to try to be conscious of the way I was moving, and also, you know, things that I can do to make it easier, like me getting out of a car or
Right.
getting out of bed in the morning. You know, it sounds like really, you know, simple things, but, you know, I really have some issues with that sometimes. So yeah, that was definitely a good thing to do. It's LSVT Big Parkinson Physical Therapy. So
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Julio, I'll let you have it last, and then we'll be able to close out. How about with your balance? Have you had physical therapy provide any help?
No, so initially I thought that the physical therapy was helping at all because I was walking normal and everything that she had an idea of what I needed.
Okay.
I felt like what she was offering was helping me.
Was
That
it?
all of speech.
Uh-huh.
But now I got a new physical therapist and a new speech therapist, and they're both they're both inclined to know with this disease what we need,
Oh, excellent.
and they are fantastic.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad. Well, it looks like it's time for us to close out. And so I would like to close this day and this webinar. I want to thank Alan Smally, Gary Troutman, members of the MSA Coalition Board of Directors, and Julio Santana, who is a patient with MSA. I'd like to thank Casey for helping us with the technology today. I want to thank all of you for attending. Some of you sent in questions beforehand. Some of those will be answered by doctors. Others we answered today. And there are those of you who sent in through the chat or the question information or questions as well. We thank you for all of those. We wish you the best with this disease. We hope you learned something from these three gentlemen. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Julio. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. You guys have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
I
Bye-bye.
Bye.